Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here in the Thessaly plain, because we know we're in a contradictory era. And I came to the realization of this contradiction in his life when I booked an appointment for the third dose of the vaccine. And I saw that according to the digital system, I have only got the first shot of the vaccine, but this is not the case since I have a valid vaccination certificate. Anyway, one might might have not expected this in the digital era of the European Union. That might be my last presentation until I get retired next April. So allow me to say, maybe for the last time, that is a pleasure to speak after Mr. Kokkalis. Okay, he gave a pass to the Commission in terms of how we're going to analyze and review those things and requests. But I would like to congratulate him because he has achieved something that is unique. In the European Parliament, we had a discussion about the needs of having statistics and metrics in the agriculture sector. And the European Parliament decided not to make any amendments. And if you see the various amendments that we have had in the past in the CAP, well, congratulations, chapeau, my dear friend. But I'm afraid I will have to disagree on a couple of points he talked about, and I believe that this will be very useful and constructive during the Q&A session. Okay, I'm not going to disagree at 100% on the first point, because I don't think we find ourselves in a silence in the agricultural policy, but we found ourselves in a delay, significant delay of including and integrating other policies. The reform that we focused on with World Trade Organization back then, the Thessaly reform, where we dealt with public health issues, environment. Those are the elements that CAP had always considered, but in a contradictory way, in a way that prioritized the financial and societal data. This morning, I realized that might be the last time I get to see you physically until I'm retired, so I decided to add a couple more charts and graphs in my presentation. Okay, here you can see my first point. Actually, it's a very short glance of the CAP. Secondly, I'm going to make a brief summary of what we have proposed and the role of strategic planning. I believe that you have seen this graph quite a few times. Do we have a pointer? Well, I'm not sure. Okay, we have a pointer. Okay, anyway. On the left side, you can see the billions of euros spent every year on the CAP, 60 billion euro approximately. It's a substantial amount of money. Now, when it comes to the red and orange columns, those are the funds that were disbursed to the markets for interventions. Then we also had the connected subsidies marked in blue, and in purple we have the rural development measures. On the right side, you can see the percentage of the national GDP of the EU that is spent in the framework of the CAP. You can see the decline in course, and if you multiply that by 100, this gives you the CAP percentage in the European Community budget. And this is indicative of what? The significant role held by the CAP in the European Union budget, as well as the very low budget in terms of the GDP in its totality, and the public expenditure in the European Union. In other words, CAP is a policy that everyone has a comprehensive overview of because it absorbs funds from the European budget. It's also a policy that does not hold the significant role some people might have anticipated. What has not been presented is what I'm going to show you now. Actually, we have the access and the support measures of the CAP. That's the key feature. We see that the money is more or less the same. The right access changes. And now, in this chart, you can see following the red line, the development of the rural income in the European Union, you see that it follows an uprising trend. Well, Greece does not fall under this category, but in general, agriculture in European Union follows this course. If we exempt the 2019 crisis of the rural income, and if we compare it to what happens in the States of America, where we have higher fluctuation rates and higher drop-down rates, we see that maybe something is effective in the new CAP in terms of income. And this is the index that shows how much the production of the European Union has increased. And here you can see the success of the CAP. I'm talking about the surplus of the trade balance. And last year was the year when Greece managed to have a surplus in their agricultural balance. I believe that this is something no one has perceived, or almost no one. Well, that's the not that very much positive aspect of the CAP. Okay, you might see a reduction. Okay, I'm not saying this reduction, but I hope that you can see the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. So that's the most positive impact we have seen. I'm talking about a 30% reduction. It's the only farming all around the world that has managed to achieve this reduction. Okay, the Americans have managed to do that. The same happens to the Brazilians and the Mexicans, but things have been rather stagnant over the past 8 years. It seems like we have reached a plateau where progress is no longer something that we come across on a daily basis. But if you compare the production units, because at the same time we saw an increase in the production efficiency, what does that mean? Well, in practical terms, it means that we have reached a point where socially and financially CAP is effective, is performing, but when it comes to emissions, environment, there's still a long way to go. And this has been the main essence of the proposal submitted by the Commission. And this is a timeline. You can see the first proposal was submitted in 2018. And the discussion started in 2017, and we believe that January 2023 will see the implementation of this proposal. And like we heard before, all the three main institutions are to be held liable for this delay. But the rules are also responsible for this delay. Why is that? Because you might launch a discussion on the future of the CAP when the rates and price are low, as was the case back in 2017, and we implement that when the prices and rates have increased. In 2013, we had the opposite thing happening. And this is why there's such a necessity to have a long-term planning and goal setting in order to have a more comprehensive overview of the CAP. Now, in the new CAP proposal, we have 10 objectives to be met. And those objectives are grouped under three categories. We have the economic objectives that have to do with the revenue, the income, and the boosting of the role of farmers. Then we have the environmental aspect of the emissions, soil, and biodiversity. And we have three social objectives that are linked to the renewal of farming and agriculture in terms of HR, and of course our livestock and our other intangible capital. We also have the role of the development in the various agricultural areas, as well as the interconnection of agriculture and public health, either we talk about livestock or people's health. And there's also another goal that encircles and embraces all other things. I'm talking, of course, about knowledge and innovation, because we want to achieve a CAP that is based on knowledge and innovation. Member states need to run a series of analyses of their needs. In that way, they will be able to show that there is a correlation between the Green Deal and those objectives. And they also need to demonstrate that the level of ambition they have set is higher compared to the current expectations. I'm not going to bore with details about that because it just shows the philosophy and the mindset we have in terms of the green structure of the CAP. The first sector that has to do with the measures, the multiple compliance measures in the past. Well, to my point of view, this is not the equivalent of a conditionality, but this shows the commitment that needs to be undertaken by the producers in terms of the production means and methods. And at the same time, we have two agri-environmental schemes in the first and second pillars, and I believe that they tend to reduce the environmental impact of agriculture in order for the better performance and efficiency to increase, I would like to remind you that the mindset was very wrong back then. And this is why I say that we didn't have a CAP of resting back on our laurels. That was the mindset back then. Okay, we might have a steady revenue, steady income for the farmers so that they can see how markets develop and progress, and so they can make the necessary adjustments, but we should also have a commitment to the rules. If we don't comply with the rules, if we don't abide by the rules, to put it simply, this means that over the next decade, the sanctions that were imposed in Greece and the fines were amounted to 18 rafals, 2-point-something billion euros. So things have improved since then, but it's very important to keep that in mind constantly, because there's this type of pressure that will remain in the future. And why is that? Because we have the public funds of the European Union that's dedicated to a specific sector, a sector that is reviewed and conspicuous by everyone. Well, I just want to say a couple of things about the needs for fairer distribution of support and aid. Okay, the social dimension, and we need to include the role of jobs and employment. And I'm talking, of course, about irregular employment. And this is an aspect that we need to carefully consider. This brings me to support for rural development. This is a standing need. A series of sectoral interventions, of course I'm talking about vegetables, olive oil, wine, those things fall under the strategic planning. And of course, the need to use those resources in the most effective way, because we spend much money on the soil and we want this knowledge to be transferred rather than just being generated, because we rank first in the European Union in the second aspect, but we need to transfer this knowledge and know-how, and we want innovation to become a tool for the direct users. Now, what are we trying to achieve with this new way of working? Well, we have 26 different direct payment schemes, 118 rural development programs, and we also have the 4 British ones, and 65 sectoral strategies. Now, all those things are included in 28 strategic plans, because Belgium has to for their 2 different regions. So every country has another strategic plan that needs to be implemented, and this strategic plan lays emphasis on performance and efficiency in terms of how we use our money, and a series of audits shall be performed. Okay, the indices and markers are the same. We also have a series of markers indicating the annual performance and progress. In that way, the Commission can have an overview of what happens in terms of how efficient these measures are budget-wise. And lastly, we also have a series of markers and indicators that are long-term and can show us whether those new measures yield tangible results, not only in terms of the income, because income is something measurable, but I'm talking about the soil, the air, the water, the biodiversity. And that's the key point. People come and ask us, what's the basis for your review of the strategic plan? Well, the first filter has to do with the 10 specific objectives of the CAP. The second filter has to do with the following question. Is it strategic? Of course, we cannot fragment that. If we implement precision farming, this is something that has an impact on the emissions, on the soil condition, on the biodiversity, on the competitiveness, on the income revenue and the interconnection with the various rural markets. It is clear that the Green Deal objectives at a European level, not a national level, are not legally binding. But my answer to that would be, okay, so what? What are all those objectives about? Petros, Kokkalis talked about those objectives before, because I'm talking about targets that were already included in the CAP since 2018. No one will come here in Greece and say that, okay, you need to have a 25% organic farming, or that you need to reduce the soil losses and waste by 50%. No, but something that one would like to see in Greece is the starting point and the progress being made towards this direction. And then at the European Commission, we're going to have a comprehensive overview of what's happening across the entire European Union, how we need to further support those processes. It is my personal estimate that the major challenge in this sector will have to do with climate change related issues. In Greece, I believe that the least pressure will be exerted on that. We'll also focus on the money that is required about the soil. It's a random fact that the Commission a few years ago tried to pass a piece of law, a directive on soil. We don't have that we have for the air, water, biodiversity, but we're still lacking that. Why is this important? Because CAP is a policy that has a specific power that emerges from the soil. And we are here in the European Union without having a concrete piece of legislation for the soil. And my personal view is, because it's not up to me to approve this strategic plan, or the strategic plan of Greece in particular, I'm responsible for other countries. 10 years ago, I authored something, the previous reform framework, something that is still valid for Greece today. Greece needs three things. If those three things are achieved, the other things will be achieved automatically. We need to have a better targeted redistribution, reallocation of aids and subsidies. And we need to see what happens in the grasslands, what is their location, what's their role in livestock breeding, and how we can tackle climate change. And thirdly, when will Greece come up with an advisory, a consulting system for farmers, something that will be open for everyone, something that will enable producers to realize who can offer serious proposals and advice and who doesn't. And that way they will be able to fill all the three gaps of knowledge: production of knowledge, we're not lagging behind; transfer of knowledge, okay, we're lagging behind impressively, I must say; and innovation. Production. No, I don't think that Greece is lagging behind. Okay, this might be applicable in separate and standalone areas, but not overall. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy to answer your questions.